Welcome. We'll give it a moment for people to settle in and then we'll get started. All right. Quick housekeeping, this session is being recorded. You'll receive the recording and a diagnostic tool by email shortly after we wrap. Today's session is why growth is an improving profit in large architecture firms, even with strong pipelines. If that title caught you, there's a specific reason. Let's get to it. My name is Brian, and I'll be moderating today. Quick note on format: our speaker will walk you through a single arc diagnosis to action, and then we'll open it up for questions at the end. Drop your questions in the chat as we go, and we'll work through as many as we can. Today's speaker is Obi. Over the years, Obi has worked directly with more than 30 large architecture firms, firms in the 15 million to 50 million revenue bracket, helping them solve a problem most of them couldn't quite name. The pattern was always the same: strong pipeline, full teams, growing revenue, and margins that quietly stayed flat or worse, declined. What Obi and what he's going to walk you through today is name that pattern, deconstruct it, and show you exactly where to intervene. Obi, over to you.
Oh, thank you, Brian, for that warm introduction, and thank you everybody for joining us here today. I know it's taking time out of your day. I do appreciate that. As Brian stated, my name is Obi. I'm a VP here at VBS. My primary objective here at the company is to serve as a liaison between our clients and our different strategic teams here within the organization. A little bit of background on myself: I grew up in the UK, spent some time in Nigeria, finished up most of my high school here in Houston, Texas, graduated college in Houston, Texas, went to the University of Houston before moving to New York roughly about 5 or 6 years ago, where I'm pretty much primarily there right now. I've been in the AC industry for about 13 years or so now. Experience being a subcontractor, worked with Autodesk, Leica, a variety of sectors within the AC industry. So I'm pretty well versed. But it's enough about me. Let's get into why we're here today. So we're going to spend on today's discussion about 45 minutes to diagnose 4 phases. Each phase is going to build on the last one. And the first, we're going to diagnose what's happening, which is the growth trap. Secondly, we're going to deconstruct why it's happening. And I'll label these 2 structural causes that most firms have difficulty calling by name. Then we're going to look at how high margin firms break through it. And then finally, we'll close with 3 specific things you can do right now within your firm to look at projects already in your pipeline. As we go along this, please feel free to drop questions along the chat. I'll try to make sure we have time at the end to answer the questions. So let's move forward. So we're going to start with diagnosis, the growth. But before we start that, pay attention. If you look to the chat, you'll see an area here in your down at the bottom of your screen. It says for polls. We're gonna have a couple polls that go out through the duration of this. If you see the polls, please feel free to chime in. This is for your feedback. And so for the first poll today, the question is going to ask, who do we have here today? So please answer accordingly. We have principals, studio, practices, BIM leads, operations, finance, other. If you selected anything other than what's here, feel free to drop something in the chat if this doesn't really accurately depict who you are, and it gives me a chance to understand who's here with us and get a bit of insight to our team, our members joining this webinar. So I'll give it a few minutes and wait, or a few seconds and wait for everybody to jump in, and then we'll move on. Oh, and side note, if you see me, my eyes are facing this way. I have a couple screens, so the one up here is the one that shows the what's going on in the webinar. So excuse me if I look like I'm looking up directions. All right, I'll give it about another 10 seconds or so, and then we'll move on. All right, that's it. Let's close the polls and move on to the next slide. So let's look at this carefully, right? Your pipeline is strong, your backlog is about 20 million plus, and your teams are fully booked. By every metric firm uses to measure their health, this firm is doing exceptionally well. However, at the end of the year, you look at it and you have a 5% margin. This isn't a pricing problem. It's not a staffing problem. It's not about working harder or billing more. What you're looking at has a name. And the name of this is called the delivery ceiling. It's the invisible structural limit on how much profitable work your firm can move, regardless of headcount, pricing, or pipeline. Every firm has one. Most don't know that they're under it. And the ones that break through do it something specific. And that's what we're here to talk about today. So nothing looks broken, and that's the problem. Here's why the delivery ceiling is so hard to see. It doesn't form one big breakdown. It forms over four small shifts that happen as the firm scales between past 15% in revenue. So your senior architects get pulled deeper into delivery, coordination compounding across teams, review cycles expanding silently, and documentation absorbing more pressure. Not one of these is a crisis. Together they form the ceiling. And the reason no one calls it a problem is because, honestly, it looks like nothing's broken. Every project shipped, every team is busy, the firm grows, and the margins quietly stay where they're at. Now, you ask yourself the question, are you already under the ceiling? To figure this out, you can ask yourself 4 specific questions, right? Are your senior architects still heavily involved in production? Are projects taking longer to move through the reviews? Does your delivery feel heavier than it did 2 to 3 years ago? And is hiring not transitioning into smoother execution? If you answered yes to any of these 2 questions, you're already under the delivery ceiling. So now we've diagnosed what this is. Let's go ahead and move on to phase 2, deconstruct. The structural leak. So the ceiling has 2 load-bearing causes. Both are inside your delivery model. And during this session or during this phase, we're gonna name both of them. But before we do that, as I mentioned earlier, it's time for another poll. So again, please interact with the polls on your screen. And for this poll, I want you guys to look inward, look at your firm right now, and which feels the most true. You guys have a strong pipeline with a flat margin. Your margin's slowly improving. Margins actively declining. Or your margin's solid. You're just here for the framework. So again, I'm going to give a couple more seconds to give people time to respond to the polls. Please do so. Your interaction is greatly appreciated. In the meantime, I do want to appreciate Derek for joining, and I don't want to mess this up. Is it J-Dip? I appreciate you guys for joining. All right, so all right, we're going to move on to the next slide here. So we're going to talk about the deconstruct, right? So cause 1 of the 2 that I mentioned is a senior bottleneck, senior staff bottleneck. This is a term you recognize, and once I describe it, your most experienced people are your busiest people. Now, on the left, we're going to have what your designed role is supposed to be doing, or what it looks like. And on the right, we're going to have what a typical Tuesday looks like, because everybody knows we love Tuesdays, right? So they're designed to lead direction. Instead, they're actually embedded in production. They're designed to oversee quality, yet actually reviewing every single package personally. Designed to coordinate strategically, but actually filing coordination gaps themselves. And then designed to guide documentation, but instead they're actually writing CDs. Now, this isn't a critique of your senior staff. They're doing exactly what the system is designed for them to do. But the delivery speed depends on the layer of people who can't scale linearly. That's where they found the bottleneck. So how the ceiling forms? Well, mechanically, right? The 3 steps, same firm every quarter. Step 1, senior time is the highest cost rate in the project. Step 2, when the time is used in production, your cost per output rises. You're paying senior rates for mid-level work. And step 3, the same senior staff is overloaded. Delays compound, decisions slow, and rework expands. Now, Multiply that across 10 to 20 active projects that you're running simultaneously. That's the ceiling. It's not visible on one project. It's structural across all your portfolios. Now, for instance, I'm gonna give an example. Let's think of it this way. You got a principal architect. It's a Sunday night. Should be spending time with his family, either watching, I don't know, NBA playoff game, decides to go frolicking in the park. Just the point is they're doing whatever they choose to see fit as their Sunday. But instead, they're personally redlining CD sets because part of the production team is the core coordination detailed earlier during the week. Now, if you've experienced this, feel free to drop it in the chat and say me too, because I know I have in the past couple times over. And the idea I want you to think of is this. If a partner is worth $250 an hour, but he's stuck doing production work at $75 an hour, well, that's supposed to be $75 an hour worth of work. This is considered a hidden tax on your profits firm, on your profits margins. So, but moving on, cause 2, the documentation creep. Now, this is a lot quieter than the bottleneck. It's more expensive in the aggregate though. What it looks like, more iterations per phase, more revision cycles in the CD, more late stage detailing, and more unreliable work. Or unbillable work, sorry, not unbillable work. Now, why this persists? This is the most part that firms miss. It's not because the projects get more complex. It's not because ownership gets unclear. Documentation expands when no one knows who owns the decision. Late changes happen because no one's locked in on the decision early. Senior staff get pulled in to redo work that should have never come back to them. And documentation expands when ownership is unclear, not when complexity increases. So 2 causes, 1 system. Here's the part that makes it hard to fix. The bottleneck and documentation creep don't run parallel. They actually reinforce each other. So bottleneck forms when decisions slow down, documentation iterations expand, seniors get pulled in deeper, bottlenecks tighten further. It's a closed loop. And every quarter it gets tighter and tighter, which is why it's not a staffing issue. You can, excuse me, you can hire 10 more people and the loop will stay the same. It's a structural delivery issue. And structural issues need structural fixes. So that's it for phase 2. And I know we're moving along here. We're going to move to phase 3 shortly. Let's see. Phase 3, we're going to talk about redesign. So the high margin blueprint. This is how firms break through the ceiling. But as you guessed it, we're hitting another phase. So we're going to call it the poll time. So if you don't mind, please join in on the polls. As I said before, if you look down at the bottom of your screens, you'll see a bar that represents the polls. Please go in and chime in, and the feedback is appreciated. And for this question, we're asking, what pattern is most effective is most active in your firm? Would you see as senior bottlenecks, documentation creep? Is it both? Are they reinforcing each other? Or you're not sure yet? So I'll give you guys a couple seconds to participate and chime in on the polls, and then we'll move on. Thank you for joining us, Sabi. I appreciate you. And if I said anybody's name wrong, please feel free to correct me. I'm firm on saying names right. All right, so we're going to move on here. So one structural decision changes everything. Here's how structural decisions the high margin firms make. Most firms run delivery as one blended layer. You've got design, production, coordination, reviews, documentation, Q&A, all flowing through the same senior staff, right? High margin firms, the ones that consistently hit above 15% margin, separate into 2 layers. We've got design layer, where you've got decisions, directions, and checkpoints. And then we've got delivery layer, where it consists of documentation, coordination, and production. Now, these 2 are not above or below each other. They're actual parallel functions with different roles. It's not an organizational chart change. It's a role clarity decision. I'm gonna give another example here. In my years as general contractor, we used to use a decision layer. So our senior staff only had 3 hard gateway reviews per phase. First one we would call the strategic alignment, which is pretty much the kickoff. It's where we look at the scope, budget, the ceiling, and risk profile. The second one, I'll call it the technical freeze. It's about the midpoint through the review process where we look at design validation and value engineering. The point, obviously, to avoid, to prevent scope creep. And finally, execution release, or another phrase we'll call it pre-mobilization. It's the final audit and the vendor shortlist approval. Now, anything outside of these gates, the delivery layer, which included our project managers and our production team, they held 100% authority over vendor coordination and documentation. And by removing the need for the death by committee approvals on the daily details, we reduced communication bottlenecks. And this allowed our senior staff to have oversee at least 3 times the projects simultaneously. Now, most firms try this but stay stuck. Every firm that's heard this concept has tried some version of it and they stay stuck. Here's why. Reason 1, approval without ownership. Seniors say, fine, I'll step in for production, but from approving every decision, which pulls them right back in. Reason 2, tasks without authority. Mid-level teams get more work, they don't get the authority to decide, and so nothing routes upwards. Reason 3, checkpoints are on paper only. The hands-off exists in the diagram, they don't happen in practice. Senior staff intervene when they feel it's easier. Now, I know I'm guilty of this. I will see something, a step-by-step procedure, SOP that we're supposed to go by, but sometimes we take advantage of how smart we are, right? We try to find ways where we can just accomplish the things that we need to do. But this essentially kind of creates a problem within itself because people become more dependent upon that, and you yourself become more dependent upon that. And so things just feel easier doing it that way. And see, the structure is the hard part. The decision of ownership is. Separation without relocated authority is just another diagram. So if you've had this and it didn't stick, this is probably why. So senior time is a multiplier, not a resource. And I really want everybody to kind of focus on this slide specifically, right? This is the last piece of the redesign. It's the math behind why high margins firms scale better. Same person, same hours, completely different return. When a senior architect is embedded in production, they belong to one project. And if they're a multiplier, that's 1 times 1 is 1, right? Other projects wait, cost per output rises, margins compress. Now, when that same senior is in the decision role, they guide 5 different projects simultaneously. So now they're multiplied by 5. 1 times 5 is 5, significantly higher than 1. 5 times the leverage on the same hours. High margin firms don't have more senior staff. What they do is they use their senior staff differently. They scale the impact, not the effort. And that's how you break through the ceiling. Let me give you another example here, right? Let's call it the 5-fold principle. Think of a principal, let's give her a name called Sarah. 2 years ago, she was managing a single project, about $10 million on this project. She was a primary contact. She sat in every single meeting. She was personally vetted by every single vendor, and she worked about 60 hours a week. Her firm's growth was physically capped by her own exhaustion. You can imagine having to go through every single meeting, talk to every single vendor, and make sure everything's in order, and you're still supposed to manage the firm. So she was exhausted. She wasn't an owner. She was just a very expensive project manager, for lack of better terms. Now, Sarah shifted. Let's look forward. She shifted to the hard gate model. She stopped doing work and started making decisions. She empowered the delivery layer to handle the daily grind and limited her involvement in just 3 critical gates: kickoff, technical freeze, final release. Now, because she only spent 6 hours a month on that first project instead of 40 hours a week, she suddenly had the white space to oversee 5 projects at the same cost of $10 million. So she went from overseeing one $10 million project in volume to $50 million in volume without adding a single hour to her work week. That's the difference between being a resource and being the resource that get used. A multiplier is actually there to scale the business. For simpler terms, look at it this way. If you're the smartest person in the weekly coordination meeting, you are the bottleneck. If you're only in there for those hard gates, you're the engine. Oh, apologize. I was supposed to click as I was going. So now we're going to move into the final act, the final phase of this conversation. You don't need to reconstruct or start to see results. All you need to do is intervene at specific points. But as you guys guessed it, going into poll time. So on this final poll of the day, let's inquire about what we're going to do next, right? which intervention will you act on first? Is it the senior time reallocation? Is it documentation load control? Is it the flow visibility? Or is it the run the diagnostics first? I want you guys to consider this based off all information you heard today. I know some of this has been, hopefully some of the conversation we've had is giving you cause to dive into what your operations are and kind of think about this. And as you're thinking about, I want you guys to tell me what responses would fall, what you guys intend to do first, if this is kind of sit with you a little bit. I'll give you guys another 20, 30 seconds to kind of answer this and we'll go from there. Okay, I see we're about split between senior time reallocation and then run the diagnosis first, which makes perfect sense. Let's move on to the final phase, and so we can move on. So, 3 interventions you can do right now in real time on real projects, right? The first is going to be your senior time reallocation. Look at the projects in your pipeline right now. Which one has a senior architect continuously embedded in the daily production? And we all know which one it is. You can look right now and you can tell me which one that you're consistently having to pay attention to that you feel like is outside of your scope of work. Then, but if that's the case, move them out, right? Set milestone-based checkpoints, 2, maybe 3 per project. Give your project manager the explicit mandate to own and execute their own checkpoints. The most important, the moment senior staff step out of the daily execution, delivery speed decouples from their availability. That's the unlock, right? Second, we're going to talk about documentation load control. Identify the projects in or entering the CD phase. Look at the revision cycles. Look at the rework. Then ask one question: who actually owns the documentation decision? If the answer is unclear, that's where the leak is. You should know this by now, or at least if you can't know, this is something you guys want to figure out. And lock in decision points. Stop iterating on settled items. Documentation is not expanding because the work is getting harder. It's expanding because ownership is fuzzy. So, and thirdly, we're going to look at your delivery flow visibility. Find the projects that feel slow despite the staffing, the ones where you can't really pinpoint the problem, but execution seems to be sluggish. Map out where teams are waiting. Now, not working slowly, I mean waiting. Waiting for approvals, waiting for reviews, waiting for decisions. Most of the delays in your firm right now are not capacity problems. They're just block movement problems, and they have a structural fix. Most firms have visibility of all 3 of these, so few intervene at the right points. Now, if 2 or more of these things or these diagnostics apply to your firm, I hate to tell it to you, but you're already in the delivery ceiling. So quick thing before we close, right? If you're already in the delivery ceiling, the question isn't whether to address it, it's how soon you're going to address it. What does it cost you to keep things as they are right now, right? 2 things on this slide I'm going to talk about before we go into questions. First thing, the pipeline health diagnostics. So everybody involved in this conversation right now is going to receive a 12-question diagnosis, right? I want you to run this on your active projects. It helps you identify the highest leveraging intervention point, the one place where addressing this ceiling will pay back the fastest. And there's no need to sign up or do anything extra. If you are a participant in this webinar, you will receive this shortly after the webinar. Secondly, if you complete it and you want somebody to talk to about it, or you want to walk through it, then feel free to contact us. You can spend 30 minutes, schedule 30 minutes on my calendar. The link is right here within the webinar, but you'll also receive this information after. So you can schedule time with me. I know this has kind of been a broad overview of everything, but I would like to know more about your individual challenges and kind of see what we can do to support you throughout that process. But essentially, that's the offer. Now you've seen this, you've seen your own system. I think now's the point to decide what you want to do. So I'm going to open this back up to Brian for any questions throughout the chat, and we'll stay here for a little bit longer to answer any questions when we go along. In the meantime, thank you guys, and Brian, it's all yours.
Thank you, Obi. Uh, so I do not see any questions in the Q&A section at the moment. However, any questions that might come up to us post webinar, we'll definitely share it with Obi so that Obi can get back to the people who actually had a question along with the answers. Uh, this now concludes the session. For everyone watching, the recording, the diagnostic tool, and Obi's calendar link will be in your inbox shortly. If today resonated, my recommendation is simple. Run the diagnostic one on active projects this week. The clarity it surfaces is usually enough to know whether a follow-up conversation makes sense. That's it from our end today. Thank you so much for joining us. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.